Hey people, I'm in Florida and it's hot. And there's no air conditioning in my van at this point. And we're rolling down the highway early in the morning, 4:30 a.m. under a crescent moon. Sharpen your minds. I want to take you to a place where Jesus repetitively speaks out a seemingly insane thing. He's talking about cannibalism. He's telling people that they have to eat his flesh and drink his blood. And he's repeating this statement. He's saying, if you do not do this thing of eating my flesh and drinking my blood, there is no life in you. And then he's saying, my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink, and you will find rest for your souls. He is declaring a thing over and over and over again. He is also saying, I am the bread that came down from heaven. I am the bread that came down from heaven. He says that about 9 times in John chapter 6 account. Now let's back up for a second and say, why the heck are we reading the Bible? No one ever presented to me the deep and heavy and concerning reality of the peculiar supernatural value of the Bible. They could have told me as a child and I would have understood it, but they did not. So I was surrounded by people, elders, teachers of various sorts, who actually were not thinking. Their minds were not fully clear to principles and priorities. They didn't give me a simple understanding of why I should have a deep concern about this Bible stuff. And here's the bottom line. The most amazing story that's ever presented to the mind of human beings, the most amazing story in the human family, the most dramatic, shocking thing is the pre-written life of Jesus of Nazareth. That's it. It's the most amazing thing. There is nobody else in all recorded and reported human history. There is nobody else who has had hundreds of predictions set in writings. And those predictions are stretched across 1,000 years of writings. And those predictions were written down by over 30 people who did not know one another. And all these predictions are written down about a certain event. And the event is not a government, it's not an earthquake, it's not the predictions of a war, it's not the predictions of an ice age on the earth. These are all predictions about one little human being, just one, who traveled around in an area around the size of New Jersey. ...200 to 300 predictions, depending upon how you split them. Okay, there's all these predictions that point to the arrival of this Jesus of Nazareth supernatural visitor who has supernatural powers to heal people, raise people from the dead, and most importantly, deal with invisible, powerful beings who can overwhelm and control human minds and behavior. Powerful, invisible beings. He is able to deal with powerful, invisible beings that affect all humans like you and me. And basically, I was raised in an atmosphere that was flushing the idea of invisible spirit beings that affect humans. My whole society, atmosphere, the bosses that are running the governments and the education and all this stuff, the power brokers, the bankers, the controllers, they are all brainwashing us to not be aware of and not be concerned about powerful spirit beings who observe humans and can actually entice or cause them to do harm to themselves and to do harm to one another, and even create horrible depravity, like an ordinary father suddenly going crazy and stabbing all of his children to death with no prior indicator of insanity. That is a supreme supernatural evil. That is a wild, crazy, frightening depravity. What causes people to invent forms of torture, articles of metal that can crush the hands and crush the head, or bullets that can explode and rip apart human bodies? What causes human beings to design these things? This is not simple, ordinary, natural human stuff that a little innocent child engages in from its birth. This is a supernatural, evil, hate, power, a fury, a rage, and then a calculating decision to do things that are unnatural and strange. Depravity comes from troubling spirit beings. And the influences over my mind and life, and even the churches, that I was raised in, Presbyterian and Methodist and others, were not sharply aware of how to handle spirit beings who are bringing bad habits and depravity to human minds and behavior. So Jesus of Nazareth is famous for removing powerful spirits who have been affecting individual humans. And those individual humans go back into ordinary mindset and humble, peaceable, innocent mindset, free from rage, free from slander. Free from evil declarations, and free from obsessions. Obsessions with alcohol and chemicals. Obsessions with material possessions. Cars and money and success and getting things for ourselves. Released from chasing the pleasures of this world. Bucket list things. And types of sexual pleasures that go beyond the simple contentment of the very sweet feel-good of the two bodies together. Jesus of Nazareth was first famous for showing power over strong spirit beings. Those spirit beings are smarter than humans because they do not have time and space restrictions. And somehow they can see and know situations, and they can affect situations. And their minds are different than ours. They are disembodied spirit beings. Now here's a problem. Back to the Bible problem. Okay, so there's this book. The Hebrew Scriptures have hundreds of predictions that all come true in one strange event, in one simple span of time. And we have been born after the time that Jesus of Nazareth was born and lived, and we could have been born before that time, but we were not. We were born after the time of Jesus of Nazareth on the earth. But the accounts of his life are a problem. They're a big problem. The New Testament is a literary problem. Why? Because the accounts that are supposedly true accounts of his life, they are rumored to be true accounts of his life. Those accounts were written down 50 to 90 years after he was gone. Now, if you and I took a walk in the woods and we talked about a few things, 50 years later, could you precisely remember the things that I did and the things that we said 50 years later? Doubtful. So, the powerful and serious literary criticism of the New Testament, and especially the four accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the four accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, those accounts were written down 50 to 90 years after he was gone. In real terms, it is impossible that those accounts are trustworthy. But how did the predictions get set in the Hebrew Scriptures? If there is or was a spirit being or a power, you might call it the universe power, or an entity, or a mind that is above human minds, the life giver mind, the designer, the creator mind. And we're saying that the creator is also spirit of loving kindness, who both designed humans and cares about humans, and gave life and the pleasures of life, and even nature itself, to us to enjoy. So if there is this entity that put those predictions in the Hebrew Scriptures, then that entity could possibly lead individual human beings to write down pure and true accounts of Jesus of Nazareth. That is a possibility. But you literally have to think supernatural being over the predictions in the Hebrew Scriptures, and a supernatural being or a supernatural mind that's higher than human minds over the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John scripture writings. And then there is another peculiar reality. We're just dealing with literature here. The Bible literature. The Bible is actually three parts: predictions and preparations for the coming of a supernatural visitor. That's the Hebrew Scriptures, also called the Tanakh in Hebrew terms. Which is the whole Hebrew Bible, and also sometimes referred to as the Old Testament. So you've got predictions and preparations for the supernatural visitor. You've got the life and teachings of the supernatural visitor, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then you've got the accounts of the first peoples to receive the supernatural powers of Jesus of Nazareth. These people can also drive off powerful spirit beings who are messing with the minds and behavior and causing evil and negative habits in human beings, causing misbehavior in human beings that's coming from spirit beings. So those people, the first peoples, I call that Acts to Revelation. The Acts to Revelation part of the Bible is the first peoples. So number one part is predictions and preparations for the supernatural visitor. Number two part is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the life and teachings of the supernatural visitor. And then the cool part is Acts to Revelation, which is the first ordinary human beings, just like you and me, who are receiving the supernatural powers of the supernatural visitor. 3 parts. Now, the New Testament, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Acts to Revelation, what is also referred to as the Koine Greek New Testament. This is another literary term, and you need to know this if you're dealing with all this Christianity junk and Bible stuff, because people don't lay it out in a clear way that an ordinary person can have a solid confidence. Nobody laid it out to me when I was 6 to 13 years old, and they could have. It is not complicated. The canonized New Testament, or the Koine Greek New Testament. Koine Greek is a special Greek language that is all capital letters and no punctuation. So you can't emphasize a word or a letter or the beginning of a sentence with a capital letter. It's just all capitals, which makes it easier to carve and print. It's a very simplistic language that's easy for many businesses and cultures to understand. It was designed to help people who don't know the language understand some basic words and expressions. So it's kind of a primitive, like rough, strong, basic language structure. And it's kind of fascinating because it's an interesting thing to put good information into. So the Koine, K-O-I-N-E, that's a Greek term, and I don't know what it means, but it's describing this language of all capital letters and no commas, no periods, no hyphens. It's just letters with spaces and columns. Rattle, rattle, rattle. Stop rattling. My dashboard is rattling. So the Koine Greek New Testament is the most duplicated set of writings outside of, the most duplicated set of writings before the printing press. The most duplicated set of writings discovered in the world before the printing press was invented and began quickly reproducing literature. This is literary history. I am giving you literary history in human life so that you can understand why I'm dealing with this darned Bible stuff. I say darned because it has been used and carried by many selfish and controlling people. And that doesn't mean that you should run away from it. One of my primary declarations is Christianity is dangerous. And Christianity is beneficial, both at the same time. So first you need to know how to stay safe and have a foundational understanding of why you're dealing with Christianity and interacting with Christianity. You need to have personal confidence. I don't like the word hope. That word in Greek means confidence. I have confidence because of the supernatural visitor and the predictions and the powerful amazing things that are all wrapped up in this. So, the Koine Greek New Testament. I mean, okay. Think about the stuff that's taught in universities. Let's just look at things on the intellectual university